mentionable poll that you mentioned, sort of, was a 5% increase in the primary vote.
I can sit back now because I'm not going to talk about it.
No, but 5% vote. Now, look, there was the prospect that the leadership would be a hot issue going into this session of the Parliament. It's not. Yep. Partly saved by that, but I think there are other factors there as well. So what's the task now for Julia Gillard? Is there if she gets over September, October, to the end of the year, what's the...
Well, I think the next 2 weeks will be crucial because...
She'll be all right for the next 2 weeks.
This poll, you know, it's a 5-point bounce. That's big. That's a big bounce. It's well beyond the margin of error. But she was away for part of it. So, you know, that's a bit unfortunate for her that she's done well when she was away on holidays and nobody saw her. She's going to be very prominent in the next couple of weeks. She's going to have a couple of immediate issues that will be difficult, like the one we just talked about. So we'll be looking at the next news poll to see whether this was a rogue bounce or whether there is a trend in that direction, or whether it was Bruce Springsteen or what was it, you know. So I do think the next poll will be important, but she's bought herself a little bit of breathing space because this is much better result than they might have hoped, and I think it does take some of that heat out. And
we heard from Chris Bowen before. He said, well, his view is that February sorted all this out. Joel Fitzgibbon, who was another supporter of Kevin Rudd's, had this to say on Sky TV.
Tuesday was a good result, 33% primary, up 5 points. We're heading in the right direction. 33% doesn't win you an election, we know that, but she's proven that she's capable of gaining traction. I think that she'll continue to gain traction.
So the party should stick with her?
I think so, yeah.
By the way, Barry, I know...
Massively convincing there.
I know for a fact, when I hear stuff like this, that no one pays any attention at all to my poll strike, because you get politicians on both sides answering the question every fortnight.
Yep.
When did this become normal? Can you tell me when this became normal? Because it certainly didn't happen in Bob Hawke or Paul Keating or John Howard's day.
Well, it became normal when we got a minority government, I guess.
Yeah, but the idea that politicians have to take a question from a journo about a fortnightly poll is just crazy.
But the polls, though, are only relevant anyway. They're not relevant in terms of the two-party preferred. They're relevant in terms of Julia Gillard versus Kevin Rudd. That's been the relevance of them for so long.
Fitzgibbon there he talked about the poll bounce in the overall primary vote, but he didn't talk about the underlying deep unpopularity of the Prime Minister, which was still evident in that poll, and was what he was talking about when he was on Q&A and sort of stuffed up.
There was an interesting column by Graham Richardson this week too, like chucking grenades, and it's always very Machiavellian, and he seemed to be suggesting, well, he was suggesting that, you know, they've only got till September to install Kevin Rudd, and after that maybe Kevin wouldn't want the job. Now, I'm not sure where that comes from, but it was interesting to see someone sort of imposing a deadline of September, and I'm not sure what the motivation behind that is. It was
but we get deadlines imposed every
well,
other
it was
day.
couched as saying she's doing okay and maybe she'll survive, but one wonders whether the message underneath was actually something different, that if you people want to replace her, you know, you're going to have to do it fast. Now, I don't know where the September comes from. We talk about the November-December period as the killing zone, so, you know, it's usually later in the year.
Unless he's actually confused it with the footy, because it's September the teams that don't make the 8 start sacking their coaches. Right. So he probably thinks that the vibe will be towards a leadership.
George, without breaking your band, talk about polls in terms of the historical context, and you go back to to that Keating-Hewson period when things did swing around rather rapidly. Yeah. Lessons there.
Yeah, there was quite a dramatic shift, and looking back on it, all the poll junkies can go and have a look at what Newspoll did in the second half of 1992. All the way through the winter, Hewson was a good 8-10 points clear, and it looked like he was home. Suddenly in spring, people start to focus on the idea of the alternate Prime Minister, John Hewson. Paul Keating started to come up with a couple of brilliant lines like, "I'll do you slowly, mate." And then something happened in the real world. Jeff Kennett came to power, and then over a 3-day period, he declared war on the public service, he declared war on the working class because he knocked people's leave loading off, as well as sacking all the public servants, and the Kennett government awarded themselves a pay rise. And then there was huge street rallies. The next news poll showed a very, very sharp jump. Labor took the lead for the first time in that term, and suddenly the coalition had a panic attack about the GST, and they took food out by the end of that year.
There you go, Barry. History of polls from the guy who wasn't even going to talk about it.
Well, we can look backwards because we know as soon as Kennett hit the scene, people were worried about the tag team, Hewson and Kennett. Now, the Labor people, and this is a vibe thing, there's no number I'm going to cite for the present day. Campbell Newman and Tony Abbott is starting to flip Queenslanders out.